Wonderful. Well, welcome to everyone who's joining our live broadcast of the Tierra Leadership Roundtable. We do these probably 3 or 4 times a year, and this is an opportunity for us to take questions that we as a leadership team in Tierra may be grappling with, or things that we see of interest among the folks in our community, and have an opportunity to invite some experts, if you will, to amplify that and to really share their insights and wisdom about the particular topic at hand. We are extremely fortunate today to have one of the members of the Tierra community, Amy Riley, who is an author, a consultant, a coach. She doesn't look like it. She looks like a kid, but she actually has decades of experience. I like to point that out because she is a very, very experienced individual. And as a result of all of her experience, she was intrigued by what she actually witnessed in her clients in terms of the kind of courage that they demonstrated in leadership, or where they were maybe timid and afraid to demonstrate that. So she took it upon herself to really investigate that. And as part of that investigation, she interviewed a whole variety of really powerful, courageous leaders. So we're excited that two of the folks that were included in the book are joining us today. Nancy Rizzuto, and Nancy is the principal of Capital Strategies Investment Group and a founder of that organization. And Mary Lynn Fayoumi, who is the president of HR Source, and she's the CEO of that as well. So both of these women have, careers that they've built over years that have led to the leadership that they demonstrate. And that has been mined in Amy's research. And so we're fortunate that they're going to join us today and actually share some of the insights that they had that led to some of the elements of the book. So before we get started, I also want to thank Sydney Alderson, who is one of our Tierra team members, who is on the call, and she will be managing the chat box. So if any of you are listening and you have a question, don't hesitate to put it in chat, and we'll hear from Sydney if there's something that is coming up in chat that would be great for us to address. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. And Amy, where I'd love to start is for you just to fill us in a little bit on the background. What had you decide that this was a book that you wanted to investigate and then led you to the courage of a leader? So I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Peg. There's a lot I could say to answer that question, and I'll boil it down to two reasons that the courage of a leader and the book were born. First, and you alluded to this already, Peg, is that every time that I was inspired or impressed by a leader, I realized that they were demonstrating true personal courage. Mm-hmm. Whether they were putting their own reputation on the line to back up a team member, or whether they were taking the group in a bold new direction, sometimes dismantling what they were a part of creating in order to remain competitive and serve their future customers. Every time I was inspired or impressed, they were demonstrating courage. I'm like, there's something here.
Yeah.
The other reason I wrote the book is because some days leaders have a really tough job. There's demands coming at them from every direction. They're managing their team, their peers, they're managing up. Sometimes that leader is the only one that knows what all they're dealing with and processing that day. And it's through leadership that we get results in our world. So I want to support leaders with concepts and techniques that are going to help them manage everything that they're doing and create those great results in our world.
Wonderful. So I know that, you didn't necessarily have the 4 pillars in mind as you wrote, but as you interviewed people and the book began to take shape, these 4 key pillars to courageous leadership emerged, so that not everyone in our audience probably has necessarily read the book. Will you share the 4 pillars, and then we'll go into more detail on them and have, Nancy and Mary Lynn, engage with us in some of their examples of those pillars. But if we could just hear a little bit about the pillars to begin with, I think that will set the stage.
The courage of a leader, 4 pillars. 101. Here's the first pillar. The first pillar is the courage to be authentically you. I believe, and I've seen it and I heard it from the successful executives that I interviewed, we are more powerful, we're stronger when we're embracing our leadership style and leaning into our innate strengths. The second pillar is the courage to say what needs to be said. That applies in a variety of ways. The third pillar, the courage to trust the legacy. And the legacy here is your leadership legacy. And I'm speaking to each individual leader there. And the fourth pillar is the courage to be bold and create the extraordinary, to really go for it and focus on the important work, not get caught up in that swirl of busyness that it's easy to do.
Great. So now we have those four as the foundation. Let's dive into pillar number one, being authentically you. And as you mentioned, there are so many constituencies that leaders are responding to and reacting to that sometimes they're almost in more of a reaction mode, looking outward than they are looking inward and really leading from that strength and that essence of who they are as a leader. So will you share some initial ideas on how people can get in touch with who they are authentically as a leader?
Yeah, this is great, Peg. I think it's really important, like you say, to spend some time looking inward. And I think every leader can give themselves the gift of reflection time, right? What kind of impact did they have that day? What are their intentions for the next day? And I recommend that every leader get really clear about their top 1 to 3 strengths, right? And notice I didn't say 27, I didn't even say 10, top 1 to 3 strengths. Yeah. Where do you provide value? Because you have a strength there and because it energizes you. Both, right? You're bringing your strength and your energy and your passion to our world. And there's a resource I can point all leaders to on the Courage of a Leader website, www.courageofaleader.com. Click on resources, find the leadership autobiography. There are some inquiries there to help you get really clear about your leadership style, story, and leadership legacy. I think one of the most rewarding parts of my work is being able to see leaders that have very different styles and very different strengths be really successful.
Yeah, and I love that you point that out because sometimes, particularly for leaders who are earlier on in their leadership journey, they may decide, oh, I need to be just like this leader who I admire. And it's great to admire that leader and even to understand what about that leader do you see in yourself? But the real essence of the journey is figuring out who am I authentically as a leader so that I can always be pulling myself towards that authentic center that I have. And this idea that it is this sweet spot, I call it, that combination of, what's important, what you value, and what really energizes you. It's not, one or the other. It's really that combination, that overlap of them. So let's now turn to our panelists. And Nancy, I'm going to begin with you. And one of the things that you shared that I really resonated with was this idea as a leader that this sense of belief, the word believe, is such an important essence of who you are and how you ground yourself. So would you explain and share with us a little bit about, what's led you to this idea that belief is really important? And you also mentioned that sometimes you actually get sort of a physical notion of it, like you get a sense of it in yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Peg, and it's so great to be here with all of you. So that's very true. My belief is really very important to me, and I'll offer some color on that in a moment. But in terms of just to kind of set the stage, my leadership style is really to lead from the heart. Courage. Cur is about from the heart. Right. And, my belief in what we do, my belief in myself as a leader, the 3 guiding principles, values that I lead with are faith, optimism, and gratitude. And that really kind of grounds me in the belief of really everything I do as a leader within my firm, as a founding partner in the firm, as a leader of our women's forum, and really as a leader for my associates, our team members in the firm, truly believing that the work that we do matters. You know, when we started our firm in 2003, we truly believe that there was, you know, every entrepreneur starts a company to solve a problem. And when we stepped out on our own 18 years ago, there wasn't a cell in my body that ever doubted that what we were doing that we would excel, or that we would create a sustainable business to help institutions and individuals achieve peace of mind. And I think that work matters. I believe that so deeply that, to your point, and I've said this to my colleagues and my partners before, that my belief is so strong, it's like I can physically pick it up. And, you know, when you believe so deeply in what you're doing, when you believe so deeply in your values and in your beliefs and your behaviors, I think from my perspective as a leader, that's so easy to convey, or it's easier to convey and kind of embed within those people that you're leading. And everything I do, I believe leadership is an action, not a position. And so everything I do comes from that heart center and from those beliefs that I have.
Do you have any suggestions for someone who's hearing this message and going like, oh, that's something I really need to think about? Where might they begin an inquiry that would lead them to what are those strong beliefs that would have them be able to carry that through their leadership?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I really, you know, I encourage all people to invest in, you know, kind of step back in the busyness, to your point earlier, of the world. It's really important as a leader to step back and to reflect on what truly are your principles, what are your values, and what are your beliefs. And you have to, as a leader, from my perspective, that doesn't happen overnight at all.
No.
But if you truly invest in yourself, because then, you know, if you begin to live in that essence, you truly align your words and your actions, and everyone around that sees that and is drawn to it. You know, leadership begs to be followed. And but you have to do the work as a leader. You have to truly reflect on what are your values, your principles, and your beliefs.
Excellent. Yeah. So Mary Lynn, that actually leads us beautifully to one of the things that's really core for you, which is really recognizing as a leader, as Nancy said, leadership, you know, is looking for followers, and followers are looking for leadership. In that spirit, I know you see and take very seriously your role model, you know, position, the way that you model the leadership within your organization, inside and outside of the organization, really. So would you talk a little bit about the formation of that sense of the importance of being a role model?
Yeah, Peg. And when I reflected on this question and thought back to my history, you can't help but remember the role models in your own life. So you don't just set out one day saying, I want to be a role model too, but as you reflect on your parents, your CCD teachers, your piano teacher, your early, you know, sports coaches, your first bosses, and you think of those people that you respected, that you learned from, that you were inspired by. And then as you move through your life and realize you have the ability to have that same impact on others, and how fortunate you are, but how weighty that responsibility is, it takes a personal commitment to choosing, like Nancy said, to live by your beliefs, to demonstrate every day in the actions you take, your behaviors, how you prioritize your time, that people are watching you and learning from you. And it is such a wonderful opportunity to help those, not just in your own workplace, I mean, in your family, in your community, the opportunity to be a role model and what you can give back to others is just enormously rewarding to watch people grow and develop through your influence, through your nurturing, even just through small acts of kindness. You know, I've realized over the years, there are many people that I didn't think I was serving as a role model for, who told me later that I inspired them in some way. And it's often through the smallest of gestures, and they don't have to be in your organization, right? They can be someone that you interfaced with at a store or at an event. So again, now that I'm more senior, I've been in the workplace for 30 plus years. I mean, your opportunities are more expansive, but the importance of being a role model and not asking others to do things that you wouldn't do yourself and is more critical than ever. I mean, we're seeing that. I mean, you can open the newspaper, you can open Twitter, you can turn on your TV, and you realize every day the importance of role models and what an impact it has on our families, our communities, our organizations, and our world. And we need more strong role models who have beliefs and value systems that are those that we want to see in our communities and in our world.
Great. Yeah, so one of the things I'm really noticing in talking with both of you, and again, it goes back to each of you is leading authentically from your center and from who you are, but your journey to that place began with self-awareness. And it's really come through in both of your stories how much you have been paying attention to and increasing your own self-awareness so that you do have this ability to identify what's important to me, and then how do I hit that sweet spot where I'm living into those things that are important to me, and that also are the same things that excite me. So it's exciting to hear how each of you has landed, if you will, into this center of who you are as a leader, so that every day it's not efforting to do this because you have this undeniable belief in yourself, but you have this constant reminder of who you are, and you live into that on a daily basis, which I think is important for all of us to hear as leaders who aspire to be even more effective leaders than we are today. So this takes us to our second pillar, this idea of the courage to say what needs to be said. And I feel like the last year and a half to 2 years, leaders have had so many times when they have been challenged to need to say the tough thing that needs to be said. So Amy, you want to expand on that a little bit and talk a little bit more about that pillar and the importance of this courage to say the thing that needs to be said.
Yeah. This is an interesting one. And when I share about this pillar in live audiences, I immediately get all of the head nods, right? Because I think we can all think of the time where the leader didn't say what needed to be said, didn't take a stand, didn't make a change, right? When the writing was on the wall, the signs were there, we need to have a change in strategy here, and the leader was too hesitant, or the leader didn't have somebody's back. So it's saying what needs to be said on a macro and a micro level, right? And you're talking about the landscape of our recent years. And I'm glad that DEI and B is getting more attention. And I was thinking the other day that, maybe this needs to be expanded. It's the courage to say what needs to be said. It's also the courage to listen, right? And to be willing to hear, hey, that's not working for me, right? Or there's practices in this organization that don't feel comfortable to me, or leader, there's something that you're doing that doesn't work for me and is not creating that sense of belonging, right? Or we're not dealing with work-life balance in the ways that we can and should, and being willing to hear that, reconsider, co-create, and try something new.
Yep.
It all takes courage. I think the other thing I would say about this pillar is that I do have a belief that we can say anything to anyone if we come from positive intention. If we get clear on what are my positive intentions for the other person, for myself, for the situation, by anyone impacted here, that we can find a way to deliver that message.
Great. So Mary Lynn, I'm going to turn to you as CEO of HR Source. I have to believe that you've had many opportunities to have to deliver tough messages to either your team or your member organizations that you're serving. So will you share with us a little bit, perhaps an example of what that might look like for you?
Definitely. And when you both reference the past 20 months, more hard messages than ever, because of the environment having just constant change and so many unknowns. And I love what you said, Amy, about you can say anything if it comes from a place of positive intention. And in the recent environment, just empathizing with others and sharing the fact that you don't know. I have said many times, I don't have a crystal ball either. I promise my team, I promise and commit to my members that I will give you as much information as I can in real time. I'll tell you which tea leaves I'm trying to read, what I'm basing my decisions upon. I really work hard to be clear about the path and the journey I'm on, and that I don't have some magic wand or pixie dust, unfortunately, that I can wave on any given situation. And I certainly understand the impulse to kill the messenger when you're the bearer of bad tidings, but to come from a place of understanding where others are at and truly listening for how what you're expressing or communicating is impacting them goes so far. I mean, I'm running an organization that's been around 123 years. So when organizations say, oh, we've never lived through a pandemic, our association actually did live through a pandemic and somehow survived. So I jokingly say, we're not going to die on my watch. We made it the last time, we're going to survive it this time. But HR professionals and those charged with handling HR issues in organizations have had just one heck of a ride and a roller coaster, and are exhausted. And, just when they gear up to try to figure out, the most recent example is the OSHA ETS on vaccinations. We rolled out a lot of training and information, helping members get their policies ready, get all geared up. And then, now it's in a pause mode. So it's like, hurry up and wait.
Right.
We have to deliver those messages and then hold hands with our members and our team to try to help them get through these challenging times. So being authentic and keeping it real and not claiming to know things we don't know. I have found people to be incredibly gracious with their time and patience if you let them know that you have their back to Amy's positive intention, that you're working as quickly as you can to help them, and that you're going to be there for them, either to shoulder to cry on with practical tips, some real concrete information, resources, or a kick in the behind if that's what's best called for, but you're going to be there to help them through it, and you are concerned and understand their point of view, where they're coming from, show your empathy and compassion. All of that leads to much more positive outcomes, and is a way to be authentic and say what needs to be said, even if it's hard.
Yep. So, Nancy, speaking of delivering that hard, tough message, I'm sure that that's something that you've had to do as well in your role. How do you prepare for that? How do you, sort out how you're going to approach having to deliver that kind of a message? Anything that you can share with us about, what goes into that choice for you?
Sure. So, just to piggyback on what Amy said about positive intentions and Mary Lynn, I think, when I think about leadership and those that you lead, they want to know three things from my perspective. They want to know, do you care about them? Can you help them?
Mm-hmm.
And can they trust you? And, and I think about the two principles that our firm was built on, trust and transparency, and just kind of reinforcing what Mary Lynn said. When you come, to your colleagues or your employees and say, I don't know, but we will find out, we are doing our best, and you are fully transparent with them, that builds tremendous trust. So I just really wanted to, Mary Lynn, what you had said just really resonated with me. But when I had, to your question, Peg, when I have had to, offer a difficult message or convey, some feedback, couple things that I think about. First is try to use words that are encouraging rather than discouraging, that everything you do, again, courage from the heart, is coming from a deep sense of caring for that individual, that you want them to improve. You want them to, to live their highest purpose and to reach their potential. So think about the language. I always think about the words I am using when I'm conveying a message. The other thing is clarity is critical. Don't beat around the bush. Don't fluff it up. Deliver the message that you want to convey. And then the other thing, just finally, I think about is be sure at the end of a conversation, whether that's you're delivering it to a group or, one or two people, whatever it might be, ask them, how did they hear what you said? What are the key takeaways so that you can be sure that you're both on the same page and that they did receive the message as you intended to deliver it. And finally, the other thing is don't wait long. If something needs to be said, say it. But again, give some thought to the language, the clarity, and the follow-up to it.
Excellent. Thanks to both of you. It's clear that in your own unique ways that you approach these kinds of conversations very thoughtfully and really consider the message. I love the reminder that we want to come from positive intention, that we want to come from our heart. That's that courage of a leader again. And that you are also very willing to be, candid, direct, transparency came up with both of you. And then to own your decisions. I hear that even though it didn't necessarily get articulated, I really heard that idea of and own the decision, or that I don't have a decision yet, but I'm going to get one for you. That we're actually being clear about what we're doing. It reminds me, for those of you who may be Brené Brown fans, of her book, The Dare to Lead. One of the things that really struck with me in reading that book was her thought that clear is kind, unclear is unkind. And so both of you really focus on clarity of message. I'm going to tell you what I know when I know it, and being clear all the way through and trusting that people can hear that and take it in. And when you know more, you'll share more. So I think those are really positive ways for us to consider how do we deliver these tough messages, because you're not going to be able to make it through very many leadership positions without having to do that at some point in time. It just comes with the job. So Amy, let's turn to our third pillar, the courage to trust the legacy. And let's begin by even talking about, from your perspective, as you've defined it in the book, what is your legacy?
Great. Your leadership legacy is an aspiration about how you want to be known or what you want to create. Right? Nancy, with her partners, created a new business model in their industry, right? That's a legacy. It could be a new set of processes. It could be a culture that you bring. It could be a leadership trait that you intentionally bring to every interaction, relationship, project that you're involved in. So this pillar about trusting the legacy First, you need to know what your legacy is.
Right.
And then the action of trusting that legacy over time, looking to that bigger picture commitment. What is the legacy asking me to do right now? And that has us acting bigger than our own egos or any normal human considerations that can come up.
Great. So I love this idea that it's, zeroing in on what your vision is and really taking that inspiring vision and creating from that, what is this legacy that you're going to lead from? And again, it's going to be unique for every leader. There's not a leadership legacy isn't a one size fits all. Each of us has to find that, and that becomes part of the core of who we are as a leader as well. Nancy, your firm has a huge commitment to the way you serve both the organizations you work with and the individuals, and really supporting them in attaining their own and fulfilling their own purpose and vision. How do you go about doing that as a firm?
Yes, thanks so much for asking. So, as a firm, we are really committed to providing holistic support to both institutions and individuals. And on the institutional side, it's really helping, C-suite executives successfully operate at the highest level as fiduciaries with operational excellence, with governance excellence, and so on. And these are executives who are running, billion-dollar organizations and responsible for the oversight of pools of assets such as retirement plans. So really being sure that they are not just dotting the I's and crossing the T's, but truly operating with excellence. And then on the individual side, it's really working with individuals, couples, and families who have uncertainty or anxiety around their financial life, and helping to replace that, again, getting back to that clarity and that confidence. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because, back in May of 2015, we started the Capstrat Women's Forum, which is a community that we created to support the personal, professional, and financial success of women. And, it's my purpose in life is, and sits in front of me every day, is to serve and inspire others to create and live a successful, abundant, and meaningful life. And that means different things to different people. And my why is because I was put on this earth not to just check things off a to-do list, but to truly help others have a better life. And that also grounds me in everything that we do. And getting back to my beliefs, deeply believe in the work that we do as an organization. I deeply believe that we are nurturing and developing the next group of leaders within our firm who share the same values, principles, beliefs, ethics, work ethic, and so on. And I believe that, as I said, the work that we do is life-changing to both those institutions and those individuals, and that legacy will be carried on.
Great. So I know, Mary Lynn, one of the things that Amy has shared is that you have an informal mantra that you live by, which is what you see is what you get. And I'd love for you to share a little bit more about that. And, how is it that shows up, and how does that relate to your leadership legacy?
Yeah. Some people in the tech industry have heard this term for a long time, and they would think it's humorous that someone as untechy as me has stolen their acronym. But the Mary Lynn you see today is the same Mary Lynn that you experience in my office. If you're, having a late night glass of wine with me, if you're up early in the morning on a hike with me. And you said early on, Peg, that you can't emulate someone else or try to be someone else. It is the most comfortable, energizing, your word, Amy, natural, normal place to be is to be your authentic self. So unfortunately, and I know Nancy and I grew up in the same generation, we came into the early workplace really being coached to hide our real selves, right? You had a work persona that you put on. You did not, it was almost like you took off one uniform and put on a work uniform, not just, literally, but figuratively. And we're really taught that you should keep a lot of your real self, kind of under a bushel, because otherwise it could hurt your career. You could lose respect. It wasn't going to help you move up to the C-suite, all of which is patently false, right? It's just, and thank goodness that times have changed, because how will you ever find out where that intersection between what you're good at and what you're passionate about is, and have it just explode into all of the positive outcomes that happen when those two things collide, which, a number of old sayings come to mind: find work you love and you'll never work another day in your life. How will you ever know that if you don't let yourself shine through?
Right.
So when I work with younger professionals, I really encourage them, and we've used this term throughout the session already: reflect, take some time. I mean, this Great Resignation, so much of it is about people really looking at themselves in the mirror, as well as looking out on the horizon and saying, oh my gosh, what I've chosen for my day job doesn't bring me joy, doesn't fuel my fire, doesn't, give back to the world or align with my belief systems. I've got to make a change. I'm so fortunate that I landed in a career and a job. I started as a psych major, quickly changed to HR, again, landed over 30 years ago at HR Source, an organization whose mission is to serve Illinois employers and improve their performance. So fortunately, I have not only a professional field, but also an organization and a team that are all aligned so perfectly in many ways with what my own calling, and I believe my personal calling, it is not as beautifully written out as Nancy's. She is my inspiration. Mine is, a little bit shorter, but, to help others be their best selves and to improve their own performance, whatever that is. And so if you're not able to, what you see is what you get, be your own authentic self in whatever it is you're doing, I would spend some time figuring out how you could bring more of that into your life. And I know not everyone is fortunate to be able to find a career that so perfectly aligns, but you can also then find other ways to fuel your fire and to bring your best self and to, really find that intersection between what you're good at, what energizes you, and what brings your life meaning and purpose.
Excellent. And again, I love that both of you have that real clarity about what this is for you. And at the same time, it's not cookie cutter. It is different. And there's a way for each of us to land on, what are those ways that we can bring our own legacy forward. So we're on to our final pillar here, Amy. So our final pillar is this idea of the courage to be bold and to create the extraordinary. And I would have to guess, again, given maybe even most amplified in the last year and a half or so, that people who feel like they're barely treading water, the notion of being bold and doing something extraordinary feels like a huge, huge reach at this point. So I'd love for you to really talk a little bit about, what does that actually look like, and how can you encourage people to shake off, some of whatever they're doing day to day and really, look for those bold, extraordinary opportunities?
Yeah, well-worded question. I feel it daily, right? Working with leaders who are overwhelmed and they feel like they have more on their plate than they can do well. And I get that it can sound really unrealistic to go for it and be proactive and go for extraordinary. Yet it's more important than ever. Right? It's more important than ever to identify what is not just checking off a checklist, right? What really is the important work? What is the work that your organization needs you to give 110% and that you want to give 110% to, because that's going to create the extraordinary results.
Right.
Now, that would also mean, if we've got so much on our plate, we feel like we're just holding back the floodwaters here. What do we want to give 110%? What do we not want to give 110%? Now, that might mean tough and candid conversations with our senior leaders about what do we really pursue, what do we leave behind, because all of this is too much and we're going to get burnt out. But if we can find those things that we want and need to give 110% to, and we start making headway and we start creating those extraordinary results, that's what's going to energize us. That's what's going to get us through the intense times, the overwhelming times, right? So how and where do we want to step up? And I have an offer that I want to give to everyone listening, whether live or on the recording. Often we think, okay, I can step up, I can step in, I can go for extraordinary. How do I get these people around me to do the same? So there's a chapter in the Courage of a Leader book called The Secret to Helping Others Excel. And I offer you this chapter if you'll send me an email at amy@courageofaleader.com and just reference the Tiara Roundtable event, put chapter in the subject or the body. I'll know what to do. And I will send you that chapter, The Secret to Helping Others Excel.
Thanks. That's great. And I hope our listeners take full advantage of that and the opportunity to really dive into this pillar that's so important and yet can feel so tricky, in terms of how we do take that on. So Nancy, I'm going to turn to you because once again, you've already shared a little bit of the story of how you and your founders, created the business that you lead now. But that is to me, a really inspiring story of having a vision and then really going for it. And I know that your belief was a huge piece of the go for it part of that. But is there anything else that you want to share about, that how you created that vision and how you fulfilled on it in terms of really making that a reality?
Well, I think that, again, I've always stayed true to my faith, my optimism, and my gratitude. And I think that, talking about courage, I took a huge leap of faith. I was scared to death, to be perfectly honest with you. But I so deeply believe not only in the vision, but in my two partners, Barbara and Will, as well. And I knew that we were just truly unstoppable. We failed many times. We still fail and so on at things. But I knew that, again, not a cell in my body ever doubted that we would create the sustainable business if we just kept moving forward. And thinking about, just two words that always resonate with me is, how do you become that bold, courageous leader? 2 words, ask and act. Ask, as Mary Lynn referenced before, take time to reflect on what are you truly passionate about? What really speaks to your heart and your soul? So ask yourself, and then take action. It's just not enough to act. I had to take that leap of faith. I had to take that action. And so find some way each day to take some action towards your vision, towards your leadership legacy, towards your goals, whatever it might be. It is not enough just to think about it, analyze it. You have got to take action as well. And I think that from my perspective, I try to do that every single day, is try to take some small action, whether it's, delivering a difficult message or mentoring a woman or providing some type of feedback or making an introduction for a woman or, talking with one of our clients, whatever it might be, that reinforces the trust and the transparency that we have created over 18 years. So asking yourself and taking action on what you discover to really reinforce your leadership legacy is so important.
And what I hear in that message from both you and Amy is I think a piece of it is in taking that daily action and having that clarity about what you want to do actually begins to create the momentum. And as you take action every single day and take a step every single day, that pretty soon your vision has momentum and it is becoming a reality. And so I think it's important for people to recognize that maybe the first few steps don't feel like they really make that big of a difference, but over time that momentum does build. And then you begin to see, as you look back, what has occurred towards making that vision a true reality for you.
Yeah. So true.
So, Mary Lynn, you've been the CEO of HR Source for over 2 decades now. And in that time, I know you've had to disrupt and evolve the organization and make changes to take an organization that's, to your words, 123 years old and actually drive it in a new direction or make a necessary shift in response to the marketplace is not always an easy thing to do. How have you approached making those kinds of very bold and extraordinary kinds of shifts?
No, never be totally comfortable, right? Mm-hmm. Always act like you're a new CEO. Try to find ways to stay fresh, benchmark yourself against others, have a really strong personal board of directors and strong partners who are willing to share their feedback with you, provide information on things that you don't understand yourself. So strong advisors, a strong peer group, a strong team, but also willing to trust your gut. I mean, Nancy, it so resonates with me that take a leap of faith. So I'm fortunate to report to a wonderful board of directors made up of chief executives of our member organizations. They're a super wise, intelligent, generous group of individuals. We have an HR advisory council. We have provider partners. We also have members who are really invested in our long-term health and survival, and they want us to prosper. I just went to lunch a couple weeks ago with the CEO of our oldest member, an organization that's chosen to be a member of ours for over 100 years. Wow. I mean, how many organizations can say, and they've stuck with us through, economic recessions and, awful situations, ebbs and flows of the economy. But, there's no perfect timing. It's definitely more than an art than a science. The science, to Nancy's point, is being disciplined about doing something. The asking and the acting on a regular basis is a science. But when to do big, bold things, my contention is that's an art, right? And that it differs in every situation. When I look at some of the biggest, boldest things we've done, whether that has been our name change, our relocations, our discontinuation of certain services, our partnerships, or our addition of new services or new departments, organizational restructuring, terminations, hires, all of the things that happen in an organization, there was no perfect timing. It was more of an art to, again, look at all of our stakeholders, take their input into consideration, do the scientific research, make data-based decisions, but then trusting your gut and, jumping off the high dive or the cliff and just saying it's time. And something you said before, Peg, and I'm reiterating what these wonderful other women have said, and that is owning it, right? And being willing to fail. And again, sharing with others that there are no rewards without risks, right? So taking risks is part of the journey, and then learning from those mistakes and really being able to talk about them as opposed to burying them. You can learn and illuminate those mistakes, which can lead to much more growth and development than hitting a home run every time.
Absolutely. And when you look at, just to use that baseball analogy, and you look at people who are known in professional baseball as, great hitters, they'll hit like 3 out of 10. It's like they're not hitting everything out of the park. but they hit enough out of the park that it makes the difference. And so we have to remind ourselves that we put a stake in the ground, we make a decision, we move forward, and then we may learn more information, or we may get more experience or more data, and we make a wise decision to shift course, because that's what leaders do. You know, you take responsibility and you move forward in whatever way makes sense at that moment. Great. So this hour has zipped by. We are just about at the end of our hour here on this virtual roundtable, and so I want to give each of you an opportunity to make any final a sentence or two comment to sort of wrap things up. Any advice that you might have. So Nancy, how about if I start with you? How would you like to send us off today? What's your word of wisdom?
Sure. So I think that just kind of coming full circle, the one thing that I would offer is, our society needs leaders now more than ever. And when we talk about being bold, courageous, and authentic, don't forget that vulnerability goes a really long way. And, Brene Brown defines vulnerability as risk, uncertainty, and an emotional exposure. And I think if those you lead can see you as human, that builds, that trust, that sense of caring, and that sense that that you can help them, and that you truly care. And for me, when I show up as my authentic self, it truly is about letting people see me. Mm-hmm. and just being there to support their success however I can.
Great, thank you. Mary Lynn, how about you? What's a final thought that you have to share with our listeners?
Well, I'll share something else from a very wise woman, Maya Angelou. People will not remember what you say, people yes. not remember what you do, but people remember how you make them feel. And you can be an amazing leader and be an incredibly good person. There was a wonderful article recently in the Harvard Business Review about that again, decades ago, one thought you had to leave your authentic, beautiful, kind, compassionate person at the door and just be this tough leader. And that is no longer and never really was the case, mm-hmm. right? So bring your best self, find that place that energizes you. What I love about the pillars is they work so beautifully together, yes. right? The courage to be a leader. I mean, in some ways, a lot of the examples we shared today could have been switched and talked about under a different mm-hmm. pillar, because exactly right. they blend so naturally and normally, as they should, because the human experience is, a messy, beautiful experience, and it doesn't fall neatly into, separate
an Excel spreadsheet.
So,
yes.
Yeah. Right. So use the tools, reflect, and be your best self. Whoever that is, be you.
Great. Amy, our author, you want to wrap it up for us and see if you can pull all of these loose ends together in some way? Yes.
Yeah, I love what Nancy and Mary Lynn had to say. I think I'll say that I have seen so many leaders at all levels unknowingly playing the waiting game, waiting to have it all figured out, waiting until they have the support of all their peers, waiting until they have full sign off from the board, waiting until they have all these pressing projects done. Don't wait. You have everything that you need. And when we're going for a big vision, we don't have it all figured out. We can't see. If it's a big vision, we cannot see all the steps and relationships and connections and actions that need to happen in order to get there. And like we've already been talking about, you start taking those actions and influence grows and partnerships get created and there's more connections, right? I didn't know when I launched on the Courage of a Leader journey that I was going to meet these two amazing leaders. I didn't know I was going to create new partnerships and expand the reach in the way that we have. So don't wait. You have everything that you need right now. Declare that leadership legacy and start living into it.
Great. So with a couple of minutes to spare here, I want to thank all three of you. Thanks so much, Amy and Mary Lynn and Nancy, for joining us today, for sharing your insights and your experiences, and really what your journey as a leader has been, because you weren't hatched necessarily in the form that you're taking today. So it's been an evolutionary process. You've really developed, who you are authentically, and that's how you show up, and it's really evident. And I appreciate you bringing, that vulnerability and that, nuance, and sharing all of that kind of experience with us, because it helps anyone who's listening to recognize, like, there's so many different ways to get to this particular spot. I also want to thank everyone who's listening in on this conversation, whether it's live today or in the future. Thank you for being willing to be a part of it. And I hope and trust that you have heard like beautiful points of wisdom that you're taking with you, whatever applies for you. And that will be our gift to you, we hope, today. Thanks to Sydney for handling all of the background efforts to make sure that we're able to be on camera and to pull this off. And if I had a couple of thoughts, first of all, Amy, once again, thanks for writing this book and doing the research that has led to these pillars. Mary Lynn, I had the same thought that you did, that I could see how each of them intertwines together and how beautifully they work together. And so many of your stories really did overlap and could be applied to almost any of the pillars. So that's really a beautiful, beautiful gift. I think this notion that we want to really take that moment to reflect, be self-aware, and really develop, that understanding of who we are. I'm always reminded of the Michelangelo quote that, he doesn't plan a sculpture, he chips away at the marble until the sculpture reveals itself. And so a lot of it for us is doing that evolutionary work of continuing to chip away until we've revealed for ourselves who we authentically are as a leader, and then being able to use that as a touch point every single day and every single thing that we do. So Amy, thanks for your book that reminds us of that. Thanks for the two of you, Mary Lynn and Nancy, for sharing your experiences and illuminating how true that is. And we hope that for those of you who are listening, that you will join us in, future tier events. You can certainly go to our website. You can sign up on Facebook to get notices for when we're doing roundtables and other kinds of virtual events. We love having our community engage with us. So thanks. I hope everybody has a great day, and we'll sign off right at 10. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.